is social learning theory. This theory has to proceed that learning occurs through observing others. That means when you observe others, you learn. Social learning theory. Understanding its implication, teachers can actually integrate roles, role models, and peer interaction in educational settings to enhance learning outcomes. Now, synthesis of information. What is synthesis of information? Now, synthesis of information entails combining different ideas and concepts to form cohesive educational purpose. You combine different ideas and concepts. Combine different ideas and concepts to form cohesive educational perspective. For example, let's say consider the synthesis. Consider the synthesis. Yes, for example, let's say consider the synthesis of critical pedagogy with elements of social constructivism. Now, educators can actually create inclusive curricula that emphasize both cultural relevance and knowledge construction through collaborative approach, addressing what diverse learning need. Thus, can you see the ability to analyze, interpret, and synthesize information is crucial for educators aiming to understand complexities within various educational institutional practice. So in our objective 3, we are going to be learning on the use of philosophical methods in studying education. The use of philosophical methods in studying educational concepts. Now, data philosophical methods, they actually provide a rigorous approach because we are trying to look at the use of philosophical methods in studying data, educational data philosophy. All right, so what are those? How are we going to use philosophical method in studying educational data? Yeah, the philosophical method one, which it has to do with critical examination. Critical examination requires you questioning assumption. Are you getting it? You question assumption and explore underlying meaning. You question assumption and explore underlying meanings. For example, let's say educators can critically analyze educational research findings, looking for biases, funding sources, or socio-political contents that could influence outcomes. I see. Number 2, the use of philosophical method studying educational data. We also have, yes, that is a dialectic method. This method involves engaging in a dialogue to explore different viewpoints. You engage in a dialogue with people to explore different viewpoints. An example is a classroom discussion where students explore multiple historical perspectives on civil rights, let's say civil rights, allowing them to understand the evolution of social justice concept over time. Then the third one is phenomenology. Phenomenology. From the phenomenon, we have phenomenology. This approach focuses on life experience. That means educators can use phenomenological methods to gather qualitative data on how, remember, they gather qualitative data on how students perceive their educational experience, leading to insight into student engagement and challenges faced within the classroom setting or environment. So now we're going to look at application to educational research. Now, by applying these philosophical methods such as the phenomenology, the dialectic method, and the critical examination method, we can now apply it by applying this philosophical method. Educators can actually develop, or we can develop a more understanding of the impact of school discipline policy. That means educators can actually study the impact of school discipline policy, which might be done combined through data analysis with critical examinations of some moral consequences, and broader societal implication, leading to more compassionate and informed policy. Number 2, application of this use of philosophical method is qualitative studies, which has to involve interview with students. Remember dialectic method, which you can use it under the qualitative study, which involve interview with students about their experience, which can actually result or lead to rich insight into educational effectiveness, actually enhancing our curriculum and teaching practices. So, in summary, philosophical method broaden the analytical lens or lenses educators can use to actually assess educational data comprehensively. So, the next objective in this course, we are going to look at some of these uh, some of these critical appraisals of contribution made by prominent educational thinkers. Yes, some critical appraisals of contribution made by prominent educational thinkers. So, in this objective, what we'll be actually doing is to encourage students to evaluate or to check the work of influential educational philosophers and theorists critically. The ability to sit down and evaluate using uh, their logical reasoning, their senses, or mental reasoning ability in order to choose which of these um, educational thinkers we can actually use in order to achieve an effective education in Africa and the world at large. So one of these educational thinkers that have contributed to made a significant contribution to education is John Dewey. John Dewey. John Dewey. Dewey is spelled Dewey. John Dewey emphasized experiential learning, so it's more of pragmatism in nature, right? Where education is rooted in real life experience. His contribution actually does what? It highlights the importance. This is here, it's very important. It highlights the importance of learning through doing. Can you see? These are people that believe that seeing is believing, doing is perfection. So his contribution actually highlights the importance of learning through doing. A critical appraiser might actually explore how his vision has influenced progressive educational movement and contemporary pedagogical practices, right? So the second educational thinkers who have contributed immensely into the educational sector around the globe is Paulo Freire. Paulo Freire. Paulo Freire, critical pedagogue, emphasized dialogue. Is more of dialectic in approach, right? Consciousness raising and social justice. Can you see it? He criticized traditional banking model of education, that means advocating for a more engaging student-centered approach. This is a person that believes that education should be centered on dialogue, centered on a kind of a interactive section, centered on classroom discussion, a discussion forum, right? So he actually analyzes this. If you analyze his work, it actually leads to discussion on the relevance of critical pedagogues in addressing current systemic inequalities in education. Now, the third person is Maria Metosero. Maria Metosero. This name is popular. Maria Metosero approach to education emphasized the importance of independence. Can you see? The importance of independence and hands-on learning. So can you see that by appraising an idea, students can actually explore alternatives methods in early childhood education and the significance of prepared environment in fostering children autonomy. Can you see? So our own philosophy is centered on the importance of independence and hands-on learning. So now the next thing we are going to compare African and Western thinkers. The African and Western thinkers, that is comparison between comparison of African and Western thinkers. Now when we examine both Africans and Western educational philosophies, students can actually enhance their understanding of diverse perspectives. We have this man here, we have the Goji Wantong. Goju Wantong. He actually analyzed thoughts on language and education. His thoughts on language, his thoughts can actually lead to discussion about the roles of indigenous language, the roles of indigenous language in educational settings, that is particularly in reclaiming cultural identity and promoting authentic learning experience. That is Goji Watong. He is a man that actually looked education in a way that we have to embrace indigenous languages in education settings, particularly in reclaiming cultural identity and promoting authentic learning experiences. Right? The second person is Jane Nantwant. He's Africa, a contribution to Africa Center Pedagogues Challenge. Challenge, that is a Western model that emphasizes communal learning, yes, communal learning and cultural relevance. So she actually emphasized, as I said earlier, communal learning and cultural relevance. Pedagogue student could critically evaluate how incorporating these elements actually affects student engagement and success. Can you see it? Now, through these appraisers, comprehensive appraisers of these thinkers, students can actually identify relevant educational practices that resonate within their contents and contribute to broader educational. Alright, so that is all about the the comparison between the educational thinkers within African context and the Western civilization. So so you can actually stop here for today class. Then the next class talk about social organization in education. Yes, we'll be looking at community engagement, tracking and streaming, and the rest of them. So I wish you the best in your study. Have a great day. Thank you. Goodbye.